Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Let's Be Frank About Sports. I'm your host, Frank Agino. Week 9 of the NFL season is in the books, and locally, it was the same results, a Jet loss and a Giant loss. Pretty similar the way things played out, the way they have this past month or so, and the trend continues of how similar these two teams are, both good and bad. They have the same strengths and they have the same weaknesses, and because of that, they've had the same results, which are losses. And now it's just like the things that you were concerned about, they become more glaring by the week. And it seems like both these teams are actually getting worse as the year goes on. We'll start with the Giants. You think about the first couple of games that Daniel Jones has started, they win both. And the Tampa Bay game, they got pretty lucky with the kick that Tampa missed, but for the most part, they played well. And the Giants were starting to win games, and the games that they lost, a lot of them, they were very close to winning. But then in a game like last night, where it was close for the most part, but it ends up being 37-18 Cowboys. And the Giants, I mean, they did not play a good brand of football. It definitely was very ugly. And it was a weird score for a while. It was 16-15 and 13-12. Just not normal football scores because it just wasn't a normal game. There was a black cat running over the field, which made a big story, which at the time was interesting, but I mean, what's really important is just how bad the Giants' defense was. And you talk about, Saquon Barkley being able to perform and the offensive line, Daniel Jones getting sacked at least, 5 times in this game, plus all the other times that he was under pressure. The best runner of the football for the Giants was Daniel Jones. And he definitely shows good things. He'll still give you the 210 yards at a good completion percentage, but he also gives you an interception. He also loses another fumble. And as of right now, Daniel Jones, he's shown you good signs. He has the makings of being a good quarterback. He can keep you in games, and he can make a lot of really good plays. But the thing that he also does is, as a rookie, he's turning the ball over a whole lot. And as of right now, his turnovers are outweighing his touchdowns. Now, having a better offensive line would help him tremendously. And again, like the Jets and Giants being so similar, we've talked about it before. But having the better offensive line is so important for these young quarterbacks because, as I've said before, when you're a rookie or you're still very inexperienced, the game is going 100 miles an hour and you're still learning the system. You're still learning your reads. You don't have it like Tom Brady where you've been in the same system forever and you know your reads in the back of your hand and you can see everything very quickly. For the young quarterbacks, it takes them longer to, fully process what they're seeing, the disguises and coverages, being able to recognize all these different things. It takes them a while, so they need as much time as possible. But when the offensive line is not performing and both of these quarterbacks are under so much pressure and one of them does not take pressure very well and then sees ghosts and makes a lot of bad plays, it becomes an even bigger problem. So for Daniel Jones, having a better offensive line would definitely help cut down his turnovers. But I just think that as he plays more, he's going to cut down his turnovers just because of experience. I think with a better offensive line and more experience, you're going to see Daniel Jones continue to perform and improve. And that's the thing that he has done. He's been solid in the games. And that's really important because with Sam Darnold, he's been far from solid. He's actually been below average. He's been really bad. And Sam Darnold's in his second year compared to Daniel Jones only being his first year. Sam Darnold was much more highly regarded going into the draft than Daniel Jones was. So the Jets, they're in such a bad situation. I'll get to them later. But for the Giants, it's still a lot of same old. Like I said, Daniel Jones will give you a pretty good game. He will bring some turnovers in there. But what has not been good was Saquon Barkley having 14 carries for 28 yards. That's not good at all. I mean, Saquon is a much better running back than that. He gets better stats than that normally. But the Cowboys, they were able to, shut down what the Giants were doing, and they weren't able to create any holes. And I think that speaks to the offensive line because the Jets have run into the same problem with Le'Veon Bell. You can't say that, Saquon or Le'Veon aren't doing well on their teams. They're both two of the best running backs in football. But if when you hike the ball, you already have 2 guys or 3 guys coming at you and there's no lanes to run through or being able to get into the second level because you're getting the blocks that you need down the field to then make some plays, make some guys miss. If you have 3 guys on you, no human is going to be able to get out of that. So I think, again, that speaks to the Giants' offensive line. And it's just such a problem that we've been talking about this for the last few years. all the struggles that the Giants have had on the offensive line, all the problems it was causing for Eli Manning becoming a check down only quarterback because of how much pressure he was under. So the Giants, they tried to make moves. They signed Nate Solder, which has not worked. They drafted Will Hernandez, who, mixed results. Getting Kevin Zeitler hasn't made as big of a difference as they were hoping for. And I thought that was a really good move by the Giants because he was ranked as one of the top pass blocking guards, which is something they needed. They need to protect the quarterback, whether it was Eli Manning, Daniel Jones, or somebody else. But that still hasn't happened because Daniel Jones is still under a lot of pressure. He gets sacked 5 times. He's still fumbling a lot. He's losing those fumbles. So they still have to try to address the offensive line. And I think it's just fascinating that for both the Jets and the Giants, when was the last time either one of them took a first-round offensive lineman? It's been a very long time, and you look at the way some of the better offensive lines in football are built. How did the Dallas Cowboys build that great offensive line? Did it happen overnight? No. They did great in the draft. They got Zach Martin with the top pick. They drafted Tyron Smith. They drafted Travis Frederick, and they turned out to be great offensive linemen. Look at what the Indianapolis Colts did. The Colts offensive line was just as bad as the Giants were at the same time. But then you draft someone like Quentin Nelson, who's one of the best guards in football, completely changed your offensive line. And you spend those first-round picks on those guys. So if I'm the Giants, with the way things are going now, I think you do tank. I think you try to lose as many games as possible while still having Daniel Jones perform and continue to improve and work on the mistakes that he's making. Because once Daniel Jones cleans those up, he's going to be a really good quarterback. And you never know if he will, because here's one of the things. One thing you like about Daniel Jones is that he's not afraid. He's a gunslinger. He's willing to throw the ball deep down the field or make the big scramble or go for the big play, not be afraid as a quarterback, which Eli Manning had got into a habit of later on in his career. But what happens is you get the good and the bad. If he's a guy who takes the risk, there's going to be, consequences, and that's going to be turnovers. So you could say that Daniel Jones is going to clean up the turnovers. I think what he really needs to clean up is the fumbles. Because if you're going to throw it down the field and you're trying to make the big play, you're going to throw interceptions. That is just the way football works. Defenders are going to come out of nowhere. Receivers are going to fall down. The wind is going to affect the ball. The ball is going to get tipped. So turnovers are going to happen, particularly interceptions. But the fumbles, that is something that he can clean up, should clean up, and once he does, like I said, I think it's going to make a big difference for the Giants. But if they could lose a bunch of games and finish with, 2 wins or whatever, the other problem for them is that there's a lot of bad teams in football. So even if the Giants did finish with 2 wins, they could end up having like the 5th pick because of how many bad teams there are right now. One of them plays in the same stadium as them, the Jets. The Jets are going to finish worse than the Giants. But I think drafting an offensive lineman, whatever position it is, the best available offensive lineman, you draft him, because that is just going to help make Daniel Jones even better. You're going to get more out of Saquon Barkley, because here's the thing. In back-to-back years, the Giants had top picks. They took a running back and they took a quarterback. Both of those guys look like they're going to be the guys going forward. But now you need the offensive line that is able to protect those young stars that you drafted to help them get the most out of them. It all comes with the offensive line. That is what football is all about. You look at a lot of these good teams, a lot of them either have really good offensive lines or really good offensive line coaches, like the way the Patriots do with their offensive line coach, and how even though they could lose a Nate Solder or have a lot of moving pieces, they're still able to protect Tom Brady for the most part. And also, like I said, being able to recognize your system and get rid of the ball much faster, make your reads much faster, all of that is going to help a lot. So I think that there's definitely upside with Daniel Jones, and it's not something to be too worried about. But what you are worried about is the Giants' defense, because just that you can make the case to take an offensive lineman with another top pick, you could also make the case to take a defensive lineman or someone in the secondary or a linebacker, any position on defense, because as of right now, you look at the New York Giants defense, there is no position that you could say, okay, well, that position doesn't need to be upgraded because we have that guy. Their pass rush isn't good, their run defense isn't good, their linebackers aren't good, and their pass defense isn't good. So their safeties, you could upgrade the corners, you could upgrade the linebackers, you could upgrade the linemen, the defensive ends. All of it could be changed because there's no star player there where it's like, okay, well, that guy is so good, you don't need to get another safety because you have, let's say a Landon Collins or something like that. It's not like that for the Giants anymore. So whether it's an offensive lineman or a defensive player, either one is going to help a lot. But for the Giants, I think that getting Janoris Jenkins' contract off the books, getting Eli Manning's contract off the books, you're probably going to have to find a taker for Nate Solder, because if Nate Solder isn't performing, why pay him all that money when you need a defense so badly? I mean, the Giants gave up 37 points. Dak Prescott, other than the first play of the game where he gives up the interception, other than that, he got what he wanted, and Ezekiel Elliott ran all over the Giants. And I've talked about it before, but, that is where the Cowboys' bread and butter is. That is where they make their money, and that is running the football. When Ezekiel Elliott starts going off like that, the Cowboys are really tough to stop, because then what they do is it just sets things up for Dak Prescott to be a much better thrower. The run sets up everything for the Dallas Cowboys, because what it does is when the defense is paying more attention to the run, it opens things up for Dak Prescott to turn him into a better quarterback than he actually is. And that's what happened in this game. I mean, he tries to throw it first play of the game, gets intercepted by Antoine Bethea. And the other thing that the Giants did not capitalize on was in the red zone, not being able to cash in. You would love to make that game 7-0, but instead it was 3-0. And the Giants, I mean, that was a big missed opportunity, because that was the best opportunity they had the whole game. Because after that, Dak Prescott didn't get sacked once, and he didn't turn the ball over anymore, and then Ezekiel Elliott ran it all over them. So, I mean, the Giants were in a tough spot. And that's what I was saying. Their pass defense can't do anything, and their run defense, it can't do anything. So the quarterback and the running back both do well in this game. And again, Ezekiel Elliott has these running lanes because of the good offensive line that the Cowboys have. And the Giants, having somebody like Saquon Barkley, they could learn from Dallas. And they're like, listen, if we set up a really good offensive line too, all of a sudden Saquon Barkley could do what Ezekiel Elliott is doing. And then that opens things up for Daniel Jones to make him an even better quarterback. And then you have more time for Shepard whenever he returns to get open, for Golden Tate to get open, and for Evan Ingram to get open. So definitely for the Giants, they have to get offensive line, but they also have to get an entire defense. And with the way the contracts are set up, like I said, Janoris Jenkins and Eli Manning's contracts off the books, both of those are critical. Then the top draft pick is going to do something on defense or something on the offensive line. So you're off to a good start, but then it's going to be getting the right guys, getting the right pass rush, getting the right secondary, the correct linebackers. It's never easy, because the Jets thought they did it when they got C.J. Mosley, and now he's most likely going to be out for the season. Even though C.J. Mosley played great in Week 1, he was one of the top defenders out there, and he's been a great linebacker his whole career, but if you have injuries, it doesn't really help. So for the Giants, I mean, you don't have to put all your money into one linebacker, because it's not like Luke Kuechly or Bobby Wagner is going to be on the open market. They're going to have to get multiple guys, and they're going to have to find some under-the-radar pieces that they fit in well with the scheme, that whoever the defensive coordinator is, I imagine Betcher is going to be fired because of how bad the Giants' defense has been. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but as long as you have the star quarterback in Daniel Jones, you're off to a good start. It's about protecting him and then having a defense that could just compete and keep it relatively close, because the Giants are going to be built on their offense. When you have Jones and Barkley, and like I said, these other targets, Ingram and Tate and Shepard, the offense is your strength. So now you just have to have the protection to do all the things that it can do. And the other problem for the Giants is if they're going to keep their head coach. If Pat Shurmur is out, then you're going to need a brand new coach, and it's going to be a different offensive system for Daniel Jones to learn, which is really going to mess up what he has been learning. So he's going to have the same problems next year, because it's going to be different reads and different plays. So, I mean, there's a lot to look at, but I'm not that worried about the Giants. I'd say they're a couple years away from competing for a playoff spot. I believe that for them. But for the Jets, I feel like they're about a lifetime away from competing, because if Sam Darnold is going to continue to, play this bad and get sacked and turn the ball over, and just the team in general is going to play this bad, they don't have a chance. Because the thing about the Giants is that Daniel Jones could be a good quarterback. I'm not sure if Sam Darnold could be a good quarterback anymore. I mean, that's just the way I feel, because when a player like Daniel Jones is turning the ball over with fumbles and, maybe in something like baseball with mechanics or swings, if it's something physical, sometimes you could fix it. But when it's something that is mental, that is one of the hardest things you could possibly fix. And if Sam Darnold is worried about his mono and his spleen and about getting injured and seeing ghosts because of the crazy amount of pressure he's under, because how bad his offensive line is, that is unfixable. And the other thing for the Jets is that Adam Gase is probably going to be fired as well. So that would be three different. Sam Darnold has been in the NFL. Next year will be 3 years. Three different offensive, minded guys that are calling plays. three different systems for Sam Darnold, and he hasn't succeeded that much in any of them, hasn't really learned any of them. So it's going to be another year of learning for Sam Darnold, where if you're the Jets, you're going to have a great opportunity to take a big-time quarterback. You can get Tua, or you can get the quarterback from LSU. So between those two guys, the Jets will have an opportunity to get a quarterback that they feel much better about, because as of right now, you're not sure about what Sam Darnold is going to do, because if it's something where he's worried about getting hurt, he's not going to be the guy, and he just makes mistakes like the one he made in the red zone where it looked like, to me, Griffin had the touchdown. No doubt about it. And because the way they make these rules is just so infuriating, because Griffin clearly has the ball. He had it the whole way. He had 2 feet in the end zone. I feel like once you have 2 feet in the end zone, the ball is in your hands and it never touches the ground. That's a touchdown. I mean, that's what it is to me. But they're like, oh, well, did he maintain it the whole time? Did the ball bobble at all? Did he make a football move? Here's the thing. Ryan Griffin was in the back of the end zone falling down just trying to make the catch. How in the world is he going to make a football move if he's falling to the ground catching the ball because he has to stay in bounds? So I didn't stay in bounds, but I made a football move. Let's say that Ryan Griffin caught it out of bounds, and then all of a sudden he did a stiff arm or a spin move. Now it's a touchdown because he did a football move? No. You have to be worried about staying in bounds first. So just the catch rule has been so bad. These reviews with the pass interferences, that hasn't worked at all. Football is so tough to watch with these rules. The officiating is not good. So all of that has been bad. But the way Adam Gase just didn't have a problem with it, even though the Jets got completely robbed on that play, should have been 7 points. Instead, Sam Darnold throws a just a boneheaded interception right to the Dolphins, and instead of 7 points, you have 0 points. So, I mean, that was a huge mistake by Sam Darnold. I mean, he was rolling to his left. There was nobody open. At times, you just have to, run it yourself. That's the thing between Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold. Daniel Jones has shown really good mobility. He ran for about 60 yards in the game against the Cowboys. What did Sam Darnold do running this game? 2 carries for 1 yard. You know what I mean? So he's not showing you that he has anything else. And if you're going to be a young quarterback in this league where mobile quarterbacks are so important, you saw that when Lamar Jackson defeated the Ravens. If Sam Darnold's not going to show mobility and he's not going to show presence in the quarterback and be able to throw under pressure and make the correct plays, how could he be your quarterback? So if I'm the Jets, I continue to obviously use Sam Darnold. But if he's not performing, I look at the draft, I look at Tua, I look at Joe Burrow from LSU. I mean, you have to look at, there's going to be a good amount of quarterbacks that are going to be taken in the first round, and you really have to do some advanced scouting on them and make one of those guys your future quarterback, because I'm not sure about Sam Darnold. And he's under a lot of pressure. He got sacked a bunch against Jacksonville. He got sacked 3 times this game. Obviously, he saw ghosts against New England. He got crushed there. So the Jets, they have to work on their offensive line. And I thought they made a really good move when they acquired Kelce Osemele. But now Osemele has been cut because he didn't agree with Adam Gase and the team doctors. That was, again, just butchered so bad. I think that is something that is not talked about enough, because here's the thing. The Jets might need a quarterback. They need an offensive line. They need more receivers. They could use a tight end. They could use an entire pass rush like the Giants. They could use an entire pass rush, entire linebackers, and an entire secondary. So the Jets need so many things just to be a decent team, just to have a winning record. But if I'm a player, I'm a star player, and I'm thinking about going to the Jets, why would I want to go to them considering the way they treat the players? If, let's say, I'm someone like, Jalen Ramsey who faked the injury, but let's say Jalen did have an injury and he wants to go to the Jets, why would he go there if he knows that if he does have an injury, the Jets are going to try to push you through it? And even if doctors say that you should get surgery, the Jets are going to say no. And then they're going to cut you and not let you get the surgery or whatever. What star player would want to play for the Jets? None of them. And then what happened with Jamal Adams during the trade deadline, the way he's like, oh, well, you wouldn't do this to Aaron Donald or any of the other top players in the league. They feel that no matter how good you are, your job still may not be secure, which was the case for Jamal Adams. And that whole story was just really whack because of the way the Cowboys, they kind of, spun the news cycle, the way the media, the way it was being covered, that it was like the Jets are trying to get rid of Jamal Adams, but they weren't. The Cowboys, they made him an offer, and it's like, oh, the Jets try to trade Jamal Adams. No, the Cowboys just called, make an offer, and the Jets said no. So it's just like, I really think that Jamal Adams overreacted to that, obviously. But still, no star player is going to want to go to the Jets where you can't trust the coach or the front office or whoever, whether it's with injuries or, like I said, security of being on the team. Are you going to be traded? And then the other thing is how terrible the team is going to be. Why'd you want to go to the Jets if you know you're one of the worst teams in all of football for a while now? The Jets have not been good since Rex Ryan was there and even Mark Sanchez was the quarterback and they had a really good defense. They have not even anywhere close, not even a percent of the defense that they had when they went to the back-to-back AFC Championship games. So the Jets need even more work than the Giants, and it's going to be even harder to do because the thing about the Giants is that Daniel Jones looks promising. Saquon Barkley looks promising. There's no on-the-field or off-the-field drama going on like there was with Osemele or Jamal Adams. I mean, Pat Shurmur hasn't been a great coach, but he doesn't come across as like a bad coach to play for like the way Adam Gase does. Adam Gase does not come across as a player-friendly coach. The way we saw Carlos Beltran get hired, well, not so much hired, but they did the press conference yesterday for Beltran, the way, he wants to be, Brody said, a player's first manager. You don't see that in Adam Gase. You watch the way he interacts with the media. He comes across as very, moody, not a guy that's, very open, wants to talk to. You see him like doodling on the board by himself. The players, he's not really a guy that you want to play for. And maybe the Jets fire him. I hope they do. But the problem is that the Jets also made a big mistake was how much they invested to Adam Gase, and they really just were so accommodating to him. They give Adam Gase the deal, number one, a pretty long deal. Then they fire the general manager because Adam Gase did not like him. And then the next general manager they got is a friend of Adam Gase's for 6 years just to make Adam Gase happy. What has he done to earn that kind of power? He's done nothing. And now everybody wants him fired. So you set up your whole organization for Adam Gase just to fire him in 1 year. And you know what? It's like, that doesn't sound like a smart move, but it is because Sam Darnold has gotten worse. Whereas Daniel Jones is getting better, Darnold is getting worse. Gase is obviously not the guy supposed to be. Gase was brought in here to develop Sam Darnold. It has not worked, so he leaves. You don't let him do any more damage. You can't let Darnold get worse because then instead of using that top draft pick on an offensive lineman or someone on defense, you might have to use it on a quarterback. And it's like those big-time picks are so far and few between. You only get them once a year, and you don't want to waste it. If you could fill that position in elsewhere, then use that draft pick for another position you need, it makes things a lot easier when it comes to team building, especially when you're not a desirable destination. So for both these teams, like I said, they're just very similar because they have the young quarterbacks that are supposed to be good. Daniel Jones showing improvement, Sam Darnold not showing improvement. They have the star running backs, the bad offensive lines, the really bad defenses, and the bad coaches. So a lot of work needs to be done for both. I don't know how they're going to do it, and I don't know when these teams are going to be ready to compete, and it's become very tiresome to watch. I mean, it's kind of draining to watch the Jets. And the Giants, I mean, they're a little exciting, but ultimately they're probably going to lose. And it just makes it very hard to watch because both these teams, you expected much more, especially the Jets. They were finally supposed to be good this year because, like I said, they've been bad for a while now. And now this year, things are supposed to change. They're supposed to finally be good. And now they're as bad as they've ever been. So there's, again, just a lot that needs to be done for them. But around the NFL, some of the games that stood out, obviously the big one, the main game from this week was the Ravens defeating the Patriots 37-20. Now, this was a game where the Patriots, they came in unbeaten with the legacy defense. It's all-time great. Tom Brady is still doing his thing, even if he's not as good as he's been in years past. The Ravens are very one-dimensional. All they do is run the football. Belichick specializes in whatever you do, I'm taking it away. If you're a passing team, I'm taking away the pass. If you're a running team, I'm taking away the run. Lamar's going to have to beat the Patriots with his arm. He's not going to be able to do it because he's not going to be able to run. The complete opposite happened. The Ravens got whatever they wanted on the ground. Lamar and Mark Ingram ran all over the Patriots. Lamar Jackson was getting great runs. He ran for 2 touchdowns. He had a long of 18. He's breaking tackles. He's going around tacklers, going around people, through people, getting dragged into the end zone by Orlando Brown, which is a really cool play. Mark Ingram was just putting his head down, going right through. Then you give the ball to a Gus Edwards. I mean, the Ravens did everything they had to do. And similar to the Cowboys, the running game was able to set up the passes so much because you know what? Lamar Jackson only had 163 passing yards in this game. And to score 37 points, yes, 7 came from Marlon Humphrey, but to score at least 30 points against this, legendary Patriots defense with only 163 passing yards, just running the football, that shows you how much a running game could do because of how much better it makes your passing game. Lamar Jackson got 163 yards. He went 17 out of 23, but all of his completions were important because he'll get the little throw to Nick Boyle or Mark Andrews, the tight ends, because they'll come out in the same formation. And it looks like it's the same play. It looks like it's a read option. It looks like it's a handoff to Mark Ingram. But really, it's an RPO where he will put the ball in Mark Ingram's chest, take it out, then he'll fire it to Nick Boyle. It may only be 5 yards, 7 yards, but it moves the chains. It gets the first down because you're getting so many positive runs. All you need is just a little pass here or there to trick the defense, and it opens up the running game even more because you can't play too much to the run because then these passes are going to be wide open. And then once they are and you're caught in between, Lamar Jackson already took off and he's already got another first down. That's nothing that Lamar does. When he does scramble, it's usually for a first down, and the numbers prove that. So they have just shown you that this is a college-like offense. It's unconventional. It's not what you would predict as the offense that could beat the Patriots, but it worked really, really well. And the Ravens, they had some crucial fumbles in this game that really got the Patriots back into the game multiple times. So the Ravens won by 17, and they could have won by a lot more had it not been for those fumbles, like on the punt return. So the Ravens, it was a very impressive win. The Patriots finally have their first loss of the year, and now the AFC becomes a little more interesting because if these teams do meet again, what's going to happen in their next matchup? Yes, the Patriots probably win, but at least the Ravens could definitely compete with them. I mean, there's no question about it. And you want to talk about Darnold getting better or Daniel Jones getting better? Lamar Jackson has shown such improvement because Greg Roman is the perfect offensive coordinator for him. They have made a system, and the team, the way they have built the team, has been built perfectly around Lamar Jackson. You have all these good running backs. You have these good tight ends that not only block for the running game, but then also catch the passes when he does decide to pass it. Then you spread out the field with a good first-round pick like Hollywood Brown. And the Ravens, they just have the formula. They make the trade to get Marcus Peters. The defense is looking much better now that these guys have more, time together. Was a lot of new faces on defense because they lost to C.J. Mosley or an Eric Weddle. Now Tony Jefferson out for the year. They lost to Darius Smith. They lost Terrell Suggs. I mean, these were veterans. These were their top defensive players that were responsible for all the communication at every level. Terrell Suggs was in charge of the defensive line, getting the other pass rushers. C.J. Mosley had the headset in his ear. He had all the linebackers in the middle of the field covered. And then Eric Weddle had the back of the field covered in the secondary. You lost all three of your defensive leaders. So for the Ravens, it's been a lot of miscommunication. Like I said, they were losing on a lot of big plays that they were giving up because guys would just be wide open in the middle of the field because the defense had not played together long enough and be able to, build a scheme that everybody knew where they were supposed to be. Now they're doing a much better job of that. They're not allowing those big plays anymore. And when the Ravens defense is just pretty good and Lamar Jackson's offense being that good, the Ravens are a winning team. They're first place in the AFC North, even though the division has been really bad. And all of a sudden, they're competing for the first seed in the AFC. They could put together a stinker next week. It wouldn't surprise me. But they've shown you that they can be a really good team. The next game that was extremely fascinating was the Seattle Seahawks beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 40-34. And the Seahawks, this was another game where it was way closer than it should have been, but they always find ways to win. And now the Seahawks are 7-2. Russell Wilson shows that he's obviously an MVP candidate, 5 touchdowns, 373 yards passing. He makes the big plays in overtime. Chris Carson ran 68 carries for 105 yards. So all around, the Seahawks offense was really good, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're able to answer with Mike Evans, and he gets 180 receiving yards, and he really makes Jameis Winston a much better quarterback than he is. But when you have some costly turnovers like the fumble that Kendricks was able to force, it just wasn't enough. So the Buccaneers, every now and then, they'll be really competitive in these games, but they don't make the big plays that they need to or prevent the big plays like Russell Wilson was able to make in overtime to get those wins. So Tampa Bay is better than you think because of how good Mike Evans is, but still, for Jameis Winston, he has to cut down his turnovers as well. But like I said with Daniel Jones, that's kind of his style. It's all or nothing. It's risky. He could throw for a bunch of yards, but he'll also give you a couple turnovers along the way. So Tampa Bay's been a very interesting team. The next game that you didn't see coming was the Chargers beating the Green Bay Packers 26-11. Now, the Packers are 7-2 on the season after it looked like they were really picking it up. Aaron Rodgers and the offense was playing much better. He was throwing for a bunch of touchdowns. The combination of Aaron Rodgers throwing plus Aaron Jones running was making for a really good Packers offense with, the rookie head coach, Matt LaFleur. And for the Packers, what really hurt them was how good the Chargers pass rush is. And it really showed up in this game with their 2-star edge pass rushers, Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa. Because for the Chargers, they took those two guys with top draft picks. And it's like I said for the Giants and Jets. Once you build the lines, you have to build the offensive line and the defensive line. And there was a play that really stood out for the Chargers where Ingram and Bosa both got contact on Rodgers in the same play. So when Aaron Rodgers is under that kind of pressure, he can't get it to his receivers or whoever is Devontae Adams. Aaron Jones can't find anywhere to run because the Chargers defense finally showed up. They finally win a game because the Chargers are 4-5 and their record's supposed to be a lot better than that. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Chargers once again sneak up on another wild card berth because they're always better in the second half. And maybe this game, it makes them feel better about themselves because they're supposed to be better. They lost a lot of games they're not supposed to win. Then they won a game that they weren't supposed to win. So it's definitely been a very weird year for the Chargers, and they're tough to figure out. And another team that you can't figure out, the Cleveland Browns losing to the Broncos 24-19. Both these teams have had a ton of struggles. The expectations for the Cleveland Browns were much higher than they were for the Denver Broncos, but the Broncos defensive stars, they came out to play, and their guys showed up, whether it's Derek Wolfe rushing or Von Miller, being able to get pressure on Baker Mayfield to make him throw incompletions, not be able to, miss Jarvis Landry so much in this game. Landry had 13 targets, only 6 catches. So Baker Mayfield missed a ton of throws. Odell Beckham didn't get to do too much. And for the Browns, what are they going to do? Again, you have to build with the lines. You could have so many star players. You could have Chubb as a running back. You could have Baker Mayfield a quarterback. You could have Landry and Beckham as your receivers. And eventually when, and how to say his name, Njoku comes back at tight end. The Browns have so much talent. But again, if Baker Mayfield doesn't have the time for these guys to get open or to give Chubb running lanes, it doesn't matter. So the Browns have showed you, the Packers show you, the Giants show you, the Jets show you, all these teams show you the importance of the offensive line because they set up everything, and it doesn't show up in the stat sheet. Everybody pays so much attention to the skill players. They get all the money and they get all the accolades, but the offensive line is what the teams are built on and how they win games. Another surprising one, the Raiders defeating the Lions, and Matthew Stafford has another good game. He throws for 3 touchdowns, throws for 406 yards, but the Lions were not able to do anything running the football, and the Oakland Raiders were. Derek Carr has a good game, throwing for 289 yards, a couple touchdowns, and then Josh Jacobs has 120 yards on the ground. So, that was the big difference between the offense that Detroit had and the offense that Oakland had. Oakland was able to win the time of possession game, and they won the turnover game. Oakland didn't turnover at all compared to Detroit's 2 turnovers. And that's a disappointing loss for Lions because they look like they're an okay team, but they lose a game like that and they're under 500. And it's going to be tough to compete in the NFC with all the other teams that are out there, particularly in their division, like Green Bay, like Minnesota. And Chicago, they have to be better than they've been. Let's go to them next because the Bears, they lose another one. They lose to the Eagles, 22-14. Mitchell Trubisky, another horrendous game, 10 of 21, 125 yards, 3 sacks. Bears offense wasn't able to do anything. The Eagles defense came to play, and they have a lot of good players on defense. When you have guys like Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox and Malcolm Jenkins and Vinnie Curry and Ronald Darby, they have a lot of nice players on defense. Ronnie McLeod at safety. So those guys, they came to play, and they limited everything Chicago wanted to do on offense, made Matt Nagy not look like the offensive guru that he's supposed to be. And that's a good win for the Eagles. And the Bears, they continue to disappoint after they were in the playoffs last year. Next game, Panthers defeating the Titans 30-20. And the Panthers, they continue to win ball games. They're 5-3. Kyle Allen just keeps winning. He doesn't do anything tremendous, but what he does do is it's similar to Lamar Jackson. Makes the plays that he needs to, let Christian McCaffrey carry the team, which he does week in, week out, has 146 yards on the ground, along with 58. You'll have Morgan 101 yards. You'll have the Panthers defense coming to play. Eric Reed had a really nice game, forcing a fumble, having 11 tackles. Trey Boston with the interception. Obviously, Luke Kuechly was there. Shaq Thompson with a good game. So the Panthers, they beat the Titans. And for Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill didn't have as good of a week as he did last week, where it's like, oh, maybe the Titans are going to go with Tannehill over Mariota now. now you kind of have to reconsider that. Neither one of those guys are the franchise quarterbacks. But you give Carolina a lot of credit because when Cam Newton went down, it looked like their season was over. But, Kyle Allen was a guy that no one heard of. But he continues to win games and just does what he needs to because Cam Newton, he makes a lot of mistakes. He tries to do it himself. But, if you have such a good running back in Christian McCaffrey, you might as well use him because it's made a big difference for the Panthers. Next game, the Chiefs defeat the Vikings 26-23. And this was an interesting one because here you have Matt Moore playing because Patrick Mahomes is still hurt with the knee issue. He gets sacked 5 times, but the Chiefs, they had a huge game on the ground from Damian Williams running for 125 yards. Only 12 carries, and because 91 of those yards came on 1 carry. So, that was a huge play in the game and really was the difference maker because Kirk Cousins, he was able to get a little bit done, not having, Stephon Diggs do anything in this game or Adam Thielen. That was a big problem. You cannot have Diggs have 1 catch for 4 yards and Thielen have 1 target for no yards. You can't just keep going to Treadwell or Cook or your fullback. Your fullbacks and your tight ends can never ever have more targets than Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. That was a major mistake because those guys, they don't have the ability to get yards after the catch. Your fullbacks or your tight ends, they're not going to, get the big plays that Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen are going to. So that was just a really bad job on, play calling and decision making by Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. So that was, a big loss for them, a game that they really should have won. That is just not the way that they should have assembled their team. Next game that was interesting was the Steelers defeating the Indianapolis Colts. It really stinks to see Jacoby Brissett go down because he's someone that I've talked about a lot this year because he filled in so nicely for Andrew Luck and how good of a story the Colts have been all year. He goes down. Brian Hoyer fills in. Brian Hoyer has no business being a quarterback. Steelers don't have to do much, and they win the game. It was a close one, and Minkah Fitzpatrick all of a sudden has turned out to be a big deal. The trade they made with Miami, it seemed like it wasn't a big deal, like he was just a regular safety, but now he's turned out to be a big-time player in the Steelers secondary and has made big plays for them and has been a difference maker in winning and losing games. Next one's Bills beat the Redskins 24-9. Obviously, the Redskins are really bad. Dwayne Haskins started, wasn't able to get anything going. He was under a lot of pressure. Again, not having the offensive line, that hurts you, especially with a defense that has been as good as the Bills' defense has. And their defense was good in this game, only allowing 9 points. Josh Allen didn't have to do too much. Bills do what they normally do. They run the ball mostly. They rely on their defense. And the Redskins are just really bad. So that was a good win for the Bills. It was an easy win. So at least you did what you're supposed to do. Next one, the Texans beat the Jaguars 26-3. This was interesting because you had Gardner Minshew attempt 47 passes, which is very unlike the way Jacksonville plays. They're built more on Leonard Fournette, who only had 11 carries in this game. And Minshew gets sacked 3 times. He missed a ton of passes. Deshaun Watson let Carlos Hyde run the ball. He ran for 160 yards along of 58. So the Texans, they show you the importance of running the football, having the better offensive line, protecting your quarterback, not making mistakes, calling the right plays. It's the same thing with all these teams. Same with the 49ers. The Cardinals made this a lot closer than they have. And Kenyon Drake made a huge difference for the Cardinals as they made the trade in Miami. And he ends up being a big difference maker, running for 110 yards on only 15 carries. So he kept this game close, and that's impressive considering how amazing the 49ers defense has been this year. And the 49ers are the last remaining undefeated team. They haven't played the best of teams, but they still have done what they had to do. They've relied on their defense. Jimmy Garoppolo's been solid. They've run the ball. They've like I said, played great defense. They hold teams to a low amount of points because of their pass rush, getting the other Bosa, Nick Bosa, plus all the other good players on the 49ers defense. The acquisition of Richard Sherman showing up a lot more this year than it did last year because the defense is just better in general. And that'll do it for the week. So again, it's like the Jets and Giants, you have to learn from these other teams. You need a running game, and more importantly, you need an offensive line because you could get so many talented skill position guys. But if you don't have time to get them the ball, they can't do what they're supposed to do if they never have the ball to begin with. And the offensive line creates that. And then on the other side of the football, being able to disrupt what other teams like. And you have to do that on the defensive line with pass rush. So both these teams have to do that. And we'll see what happens with the rest of the NFL season. What teams are the Chargers going to make a big run at it? Will the Cardinals be a little more competitive? What are the Vikings going to do? What are the Bears going to do? The Colts. A lot of these teams are in the middle ground. They're 5-4. They're 4-5 because we're a little past the halfway mark of the season. So we're going to see who shows up in the second half and maybe who falls off. We'll see what happens. Do the Ravens sneak and get the 1 seed? Comment. Let me know what you think of what's going on in the NFL. If you did like this video, leave a like and subscribe to keep up with more videos coming. Will be more baseball stuff as more off-season moves happen. Will be basketball once the season picks up a little bit. Regular season basketball, the first couple months, not much happens, and we'll see what happens with the Nets. They're playing a little better after they lost a lot of games they weren't supposed to. Kyrie Irving's been good, had more of a team performance. Taurean Prince has been filling in, so I will talk to Nets. I really hope sometime soon. I'll try my best to get to that. But until then, have a good one, everybody.